The county assessor's office smelled like wet cardboard and disappointment. I'd been living in my truck with Maya for 3 months, circling want ads and shelter wait lists, watching my daughter's school attendance crumble. The clerk slid a photocopied list across the counter. Tax-delinquent properties scheduled for auction. Most were lots, liens stacked higher than any bid I could dream of. Then I saw it. Lot 47, Rural Route 8. Barn structure, unsalvageable condition. Starting bid, $200. No water, no power, as is. The clerk warned me it was probably a liability, but I had $340 in my pocket from selling my tools, and Maya needed walls around her before winter. We drove out that afternoon. The barn leaned like a drunk making promises. Tin roof buckled in the middle, gaps between the boards wide enough to lose daylight through. But it had bones, oak beams darkened by a century of weather, and the smell of old hay and something else. Purpose, maybe, or just the memory of it. Maya stood in the doorway, her backpack heavier than her frame, and asked if this was home now. I told her it could be. The wind answered through the walls, a low whistle that sounded almost like agreement. Inside, the floor was a patchwork of rotted planks and packed dirt. A rusted tractor skeleton occupied one corner. Swallow nests lined the rafters. But someone had lived here once, not just stored equipment. A wood stove squatted near the center, its pipe long collapsed. Shelves built from scrap lumber held nothing but dust and a single mason jar filled with nails. And in the corner, covered by a tarp stiff with age, I found a workbench still solid enough to hold weight. I spent the bid money and another $120 on a tarp, lumber scraps, a camping stove, and 2 sleeping bags rated for cold. We moved in the same day before I could lose my nerve. Chapter 1. The claim. The first night I learned what cold really meant. Maya curled against me inside both sleeping bags, shivering despite 3 layers. The wind found every gap, turned the barn into a bellows. I lay awake, listening to the tin roof rattle, wondering if this was desperation or determination. Probably both. By dawn, I'd made a plan. The truck had to go. It was bleeding money in gas and insurance I couldn't afford. I sold it for $1, $800, kept $200 for registration of the property deed, and banked the rest for materials. We were committed now. No engine, no escape route. Just this leaning barn and the question of whether we could make it stand. The property transfer took 3 days. The county clerk seemed almost apologetic handing over the deed, like she was giving me a death certificate instead of a title. No utilities, she reminded me, and you're responsible for bringing it up to code if you plan to occupy it legally. Legal occupancy felt like a joke. We were already sleeping there, Maya's homework spread across the workbench by lantern light, her breath fogging in the October air. But the deed was real. I held it in the barn that night, Maya asleep in her sleeping bag cocoon, and felt something shift. Not ownership. I didn't own anything, really. Just responsibility. This place needed us as much as we needed it. I started small, patched the worst gaps with plywood scraps I found behind the hardware store's dumpster. The owner, Hank, caught me and instead of calling the cops, loaded up offcuts and damaged boards he couldn't sell. "Heard you bought the old Pritchard barn," he said. "That place has good bones. Shame what happened to Earl." Earl Pritchard, the first real name connected to this place. I asked what happened, but Hank just shook his head and drove off. That night I searched the barn more carefully. In the tack room, barely 6 feet square, its door hanging by one hinge, I found the first clue. Carved into the doorframe, maybe 4 feet up. E. P. plus M. P. 1987. The letters were careful, deep enough to survive decades. Someone had taken time here, marked permanence. Maya noticed me staring at it. "Who's EP?" "Someone who lived here before," I said. "Someone who wanted to be remembered." She traced the letters with her finger. "Like we're going to be remembered." I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. The next discovery came while I was reinforcing the floor. 3 planks in the northeast corner were softer than the rest, spongy with rot. I pried them up to find solid earth beneath, and a tobacco tin rusted shut. Inside, 3 black and white photographs, their edges curled but images intact. The first showed a young couple standing in front of this barn, fresh paint gleaming, her hand on his shoulder. The second was the same woman, older, holding a toddler. The third was the man alone, graying now, standing beside the barn with a cane. On the back of that one, in faded pencil, "Last good year, 1998. Maya studied them by lantern light that evening. "They look happy," she said. "They do. But the last photo carried weight. Last good year. What came after?" I hung the photos on the wall above the workbench. They felt like permission somehow. Like the barn was saying, "You're not the first to struggle here and you won't be the last, but you're here now, so build." Chapter 2. First ground I found work 3 towns over, framing for a contractor who paid cash and didn't ask questions. 10-hour days, my back screaming by sunset, but it was $120 a day, and we needed every dollar. Maya rode the school bus from the rural route stop, a mile walk from the barn, and did her homework by headlamp until I got back. The barn was teaching me its language. The way the east wall groaned in morning wind meant weather coming. The smell of wet hay when it rained meant the roof leak was spreading. The particular creak of the center beam was just settling, not structural. I learned to sleep through that one. With the first paycheck, I bought insulation and vapor barrier, lined the tack room first, the smallest space, the one we could actually heat, sealed the walls, patched the roof above it, installed a salvage door with a real lock. By November, we had one warm room. Maya hung her school art on the walls, and it felt like victory. But the barn held more secrets. Clearing the debris pile behind the structure, I found fence posts rotted through and beneath them a wooden crate stamped E. Pritchard, Seeds, Heirloom. Inside, protected by layers of wax paper, dozens of envelopes labeled in that same careful hand. Brandywine tomatoes, Cherokee purple, Moon and Stars melon, Bull's blood beet. The dates went back to 1989. Someone had saved these for decades, maintained them, believed in next seasons. The envelopes felt fragile and heavy at once. I showed Maya. She held the tomato seeds like they mattered. "Can we plant them?" "In spring," I said, "if we're still here." "We will be." She said it with such certainty that I almost believed her. I asked around town about Earl Pritchard. The librarian remembered him. A quiet man who'd kept to himself after his wife died. Grew vegetables, sold them at the farmer's market until his health failed. The barn had been his family's since the 1920s, she said. No children, no close relatives. When he died 6 years ago, the property went to the county for unpaid taxes. He was kind, she added. Gave away more vegetables than he sold. People loved him for it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Earl, alone in this barn, keeping seeds through seasons he'd never see, tending a place that would outlast him. What had driven him? What had he hoped for? The answer was in the rafters. I found it during a roof inspection, tucked inside a beam junction wrapped in oilcloth. A journal. Not a diary. A work ledger. Earl's daily notes from 1995 to 2003, weather observations, planting dates, yield counts, and scattered throughout in margins and between entries fragments of something else. M said her back hurts today. Made her tea but can't make the year stop. Sold 12 pounds of tomatoes. Mrs. Chen paid double. Tried to say no, but she insisted. Good people. M gone 4 years today. Still talk to her while I work. Neighbors probably think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. The journal ended abruptly in 2003. The final entry. Doctor says 6 months, maybe less. Haven't told anyone. The garden won't care. Seeds will wait. That's enough. I sat on the workbench, journal open on my lap, and understood. Earl hadn't been keeping this place for himself. He'd been keeping it for what came after. For the seeds. For the possibility. For whoever might need it next. That was us. Maya and me. We were the after. Chapter 3. Building forward. Winter hit early. The tack room held heat, barely, but the rest of the barn became a frozen cathedral. I worked on weekends, fortifying walls, replacing rotten sill plates, scavenging materials wherever I could find them. A demolition site yielded windows, single pane and drafty, but windows. The Salvation Army donated 2 space heaters when I explained our situation. The barn was transforming inch by inch. Not pretty, not finished, but functional. Alive. Maya helped after school, holding boards steady while I hammered, sweeping sawdust, organizing nails by size with a seriousness that broke my heart. She was 8 years old and learning how to build shelter because she had to. But she smiled more, slept better. Her teacher called to say her grades were improving. She seems more settled, the teacher said. I didn't tell her we were living in a barn with no running water, hauling buckets from the town pump 2 miles away. The neighbors noticed. First, it was just curious glances as they drove past on Route 8. Then, Mrs. Chen, the same woman from Earl's Journal, now in her 80s, showed up with a casserole and questions. I told her the truth. We were fixing up Earl's old place, trying to make it work. Her eyes softened. Earl would like that, she said. He believed places should be used, not abandoned. She left the casserole and came back the next day with her grandson, who helped me replace the worst roof sections. Word spread. Small town mechanics, you help one, they tell another. By Christmas, we had a crew of sorts. Hank from the hardware store donated roofing nails and shingles. The pastor from the Methodist church organized a weekend work party. 14 people showed up to insulate the main room and install a wood stove that actually worked. Maya baked them cookies using the camping stove, presenting them like an offering. Community is built this way, the pastor told me as we shared coffee. Earl used to say that. He gave a lot in his time. Now it's circling back. But the barn wasn't the only thing I was fixing. I was trying to rebuild myself too. Every morning, I looked at Maya and remembered why I'd left her mother, why I'd chosen the hard road instead of the unsafe one. This barn was proof I could do it, could be the father she deserved. If you're enjoying this journey so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Chapter 4. The Storm and the Question. February brought the storm. Weather warnings started Tuesday, but I thought we were ready. I'd patched the roof, reinforced the walls, sealed the windows. The wood stove was stocked. We had food, water, blankets. We'd be fine. The wind hit Wednesday at midnight. Not the usual whistle through gaps, but a roar that shook the beams. Rain hammered the tin roof like God's drumline. Maya woke terrified, and I held her in the tack room while the barn shuddered around us. By dawn, I assessed the damage. The main roof held barely, but the north wall, the one I hadn't reinforced yet, had bowed inward 6 inches. One more gust and it would cave. Water pooled in the northeast corner right above the spot where I'd found Earl's tin of photographs. I called in sick to work and spent the day bracing the wall with everything I could find. Maya helped, her small hands passing me nails, her presence the only thing keeping me from panic. By sunset, the wall held, but I knew we were out of time. The barn needed real repairs, professional work, maybe $5,000 worth. I had $340 in the bank. That night, a truck pulled up. Rick Davison stepped out, a property developer I'd seen around town, always wearing khakis and carrying a clipboard. He knocked on the barn door, all smiles. Heard you had some weather, he said. Mind if I look around? I let him in because refusing felt suspicious. He walked the space slowly, professionally, noting the repairs, the makeshift insulation, the way we'd made this wreck livable. You've done good work, he said. But this place is still a money pit. I'm prepared to offer you $8,000 for the property. Cash. You could get an apartment, start fresh. $8,000. It was more than I'd seen in a year. It would mean stability, safety, a real roof for Maya. It would mean giving up. I'll think about it, I said. He left a business card. Don't think too long. Offer expires in 2 weeks. Maya heard the whole thing. After he left, she asked, Are we leaving? I don't know, I said. Honesty was all I had left. That weekend, I went back to Earl's Journal, reading entries I'd skipped before. One from 1997 caught me. Em asked if I regret keeping the farm. Told her no. A place isn't about profit. It's about having ground under your feet that's yours to tend. She understood. She always understood. I thought about that for 2 days. Ground under your feet. Yours to tend. Maya and I had that here barely, but we had it. Walking away meant giving up more than a barn. It meant teaching her that safety was always somewhere else, always someone else's to offer or take away. On Sunday, I called Rick Davison and declined. Maya heard me hang up and didn't say anything, just hugged me harder than usual. But the decision meant we needed a miracle. The barn wouldn't survive another storm season without serious investment. Chapter 5. The Letter and the Truth. The miracle came from the walls themselves. I was reframing the north wall, removing damaged boards to replace them with donated lumber, when I found the hollow. Someone had built a false section inside the wall, sealed with tongue and groove boards that matched the exterior. Hidden so well I'd have missed it if the storm hadn't cracked the joint. Inside, a metal document box, still sealed, and a letter taped to the lid, addressed to whoever comes next. My hands shook opening it. Earl's handwriting, dated May 2009, 6 months before he died according to the journal. Dear friend, if you're reading this, you've done what I hoped someone would, given this old barn a second life. I built the hiding spot in 1998, when Em was sick and I knew hard times were coming. Saved what I could, not for me, but for after. Inside this box, the original deed to this property, dated 1924, showing 3 acres, not 1. The county lost track of the boundaries in the 70s digital conversion. Also included, receipts for all improvements I made 1995-2008, totaling $47, segulo or orders, and the title to the water rights for Pritchard Creek, which runs underground beneath the barn's northeast corner. Worth more than I ever needed, but valuable if you know what to do with it. I'm not wealthy. I'm dying. But this place was good to Em and me for 40 years. We had everything we needed here, ground to tend, neighbors to feed, seasons that made sense. The barn held us. Now it can hold you. 3 rules if you stay. 1. Plant the seeds. Feed people. That's what land is for. 2. Keep the deed safe. This place has to last. 3. Don't make the barn into something it's not. It's humble. Stay humble with it. You've already proven you can do the work. Now do the rest. Earl Pritchard. I read it 3 times before my vision cleared. Maya found me sitting on the floor, document box open, papers spread around me like a map to a future I hadn't imagined. The deed showed 3 acres, not 1, including the wooded lot to the east I'd assumed belonged to someone else. The water rights were real, documented, and apparently quite valuable for irrigation in this drought-prone county. The receipts might lower my property taxes or even qualify for historical restoration grants. But more than the legal documents, more than the potential value, it was Earl's belief that someone would come, would care, would do the work. He'd built this hiding spot 10 years before I was even homeless, 15 years before Maya was born. He couldn't have known us, but he'd trusted the barn to find the right people, or to make us the right people by demanding we rise to meet it. What does it mean? Maya asked. It means we have a chance, I said, and it means we have responsibilities. That week, I took Earl's documents to a lawyer who offered free consultations. She confirmed everything. The property was 3 acres. The water rights were valid and potentially leasable to local farms, and the receipts could be used to apply for agricultural heritage grants that might fund proper restoration. Within a month, we had $12,000 in grant money and a contract to lease the water rights for $400 monthly. Not wealth, but enough. Enough to hire proper repairs, install a well, bring in electricity. Enough to breathe. The barn began its real transformation. Contractors marveled at the bones. They don't build them like this anymore, and worked with me to preserve Earl's craftsmanship while making the structure sound. By April, we had a functioning bathroom, a kitchenette, and a living space that could legally be called a home. And Maya planted Earl's seeds. Every envelope, carefully started in trays, then transplanted to the cleared ground behind the barn. She tended them like promises. Chapter 6. The Harvest and the Circle. Summer proved Earl knew his seeds. The garden exploded. Tomatoes so red they looked like lanterns, melons heavy enough to require 2 hands, beets that stained everything they touched. Maya harvested with a devotion that startled me. She understood somehow that this was more than food. It was a conversation with someone she'd never met. We gave most of it away. That was Earl's rule, and we honored it. Mrs. Chen got the first basket, then the pastor's family, then Hank, then everyone who'd helped us, and then whoever needed it. The farmer's market let us set up a stand for free, and Maya wrote the signs. From Earl Pritchard's heirloom seeds, grown with love. People remembered Earl. They told stories while buying tomatoes, how he'd never charged the Henderson family after their house fire, how he'd taught the elementary kids about composting every spring, how he'd simply been present, steady, year after year, growing things. "He'd be proud of what you've done here," Mrs. Chen said, selecting Cherokee purple tomatoes. This is exactly what he hoped for. The barn was complete by August. Not perfect. The floors were still uneven. The walls showed their age. The whole structure leaned slightly east as if remembering the storm. But it was sound. It was home. The local paper ran a feature. Barn finds new life. Homeless father and daughter honor late owner's legacy. The story spread online, and donations came in we hadn't asked for, enough to start a small scholarship fund in Earl's name for kids from struggling families. But the attention brought complications. Rick Davison returned with a new offer, $35 or dollars, citing the water rights and improved property value. "You've increased the value significantly," he said. "Take the profit, you earned it." I almost laughed. "The barn isn't for profit," I said. "Earl taught me that." He didn't understand. Some people don't. In September, Maya started 3rd grade at the same school but different. She invited her class to visit the garden, and 17 kids showed up to learn about heirloom seeds and why vegetables taste better when you grow them yourself. Her teacher called it transformative education. I called it Earl's final gift. By October, 1 year after we'd first seen the barn, we had established a small community program. Every Saturday, neighbors gathered to work the garden, share meals, fix whatever needed fixing. Not charity, just people tending ground together, the way Earl had always done. The barn held 15 people comfortably now, with the main room open and the loft converted to storage. We hosted the gathering that Saturday, and Maya read Earl's letter aloud to the group, the first time anyone else had heard it. "He knew someone would come," she said when she finished. "He just didn't know it would be us." Mrs. Chen wiped her eyes. "He knew someone who needed ground to stand on would find it." That's the same thing. That night, after everyone left, Maya and I sat on the porch I'd built, solid oak from a demolished barn 2 counties over, traded for labor. The stars were out. The barn creaked its familiar settling creak. The garden smelled like earth and late-season tomatoes. "Do you think Earl can see us?" Maya asked. "I think the barn shows him," I said. "Every nail we hammer, every seed you plant." That's the conversation. She leaned against me, satisfied with that answer. The barn had taught us its language, and we'd learned to speak back, not with grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but with steady work, kept promises, and the understanding that a place becomes home when you give it purpose beyond survival. We were Earl's after, and someday we'd be someone else's before. The barn would hold them too if they did the work. If this restoration story has you hooked, hit like. It helps us bring more lost places back to life. Some inheritances arrive as paperwork. The best ones arrive as responsibility wrapped in grace, asking only that you tend what you've been given and pass it forward when the season comes. Subscribe for more true-to-life tales of rebuilding, memory, and hidden history. See you in the next story.